Hello, everyone. Welcome to another 3D Total interview. Today, we'll be talking with the amazing and phenomenal Brett Bean. Brett is an author, illustrator, and comic book artist based in Los Angeles, California. He has worked in multiple industries from comics, film, board game, with clients ranging from Disney, DreamWorks, Riot Games, just to name a few. Today, we'll be chatting with Brent on his new book in collaboration with 3D Total, Draw, which is an all-in-one book where he breaks down everything you need to know about the art of drawing. With all introductions out of the way, let's just get into the interview. Thank you so much. Excited for this interview.
Thank you.
Can't wait to talk about the book.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. But before we dive into the book, can you just take your time to introduce yourself? I always enjoy knowing more about the artist and knowing your creative journey, how you started off and how you got to where you are today.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, now my name is Brett Bean. I like long walks on the beach, and so I'm the type of artist that I'm a blue collar artist. I didn't start out doing it. I kind of had to find my way to art school. Had to pay for it myself. I did 2 years at DigiPen, School of Technology, and then I got a job as a 3D artist making video games, and I had made it. And then about 2 years in, I realized that's not where I wanted to be. So I had just gotten married, and I asked my wife, can I quit my job altogether and move to LA and restart my career? And she said yes. And so we packed up within 2 months, not very smart, but we packed up, moved to LA into a tiny little studio. And then I went to Noman School of Visual Effects for a bit. It's what I could afford. And I actually worked at a GameStop selling my own games that I had made for Sony. And so I went to school again to try to be a concept artist and character designer. And then I got my first job. And then I bounced from Texas to San Francisco to Seattle to LA and back. And then I finally just went, I'm done bouncing around to all these jobs. And so I just went full freelance. And then I was like, okay, I'm not going to drag my wife and kids around all these places. And so we settled in LA, freelance for years. And then I worked on a little bit of everything. And then we decided during the pandemic to try to move overseas. So we went to live in Portugal for 2 years. We did that. And then that's when Simon and 3D Total got a hold of me while I was in Portugal and said, do you want to do this book? And I said yes, not knowing that I would be doing this book during the entire move back overseas to LA. So all of this was also during the entire part of getting 4 people in and out of another international hub to back to LA. So it was interesting.
Definitely sounds like an interesting journey, everything. Because I can only imagine having to work on a whole book while moving. I know the stress for moving. That's great. It's amazing that you were able to accomplish that.
It's a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But each time you do it, I think you build up your tolerance level of what you can handle. So if you keep it low and you don't try to expand yourself, and you're talking personally, emotionally, artistically, anything, if you keep yourself in this low part, you don't realize how far you're able to actually push yourself. And so even doing those uncomfortable things like moving, going overseas, each one of those things kind of just raise your tolerance. And so it's just easier to do it because you're like, I've done this before, whatever, so it just gets easier over time, I find.
Yeah, I heard this quote that says, if you're not uncomfortable, then you're not making progress. I don't know how, it's like you have to kind of push yourself in order to kind of notice that you're improving and change is happening and you're moving forward apparently. So I guess, yeah.
Definitely. I definitely agree with part of that, but the other half, so I used to only drive myself through that way. So every moment wasn't comfortable in life. And then you're like, but look at all those happy people who don't give a I'd like to be a little bit more like them too. So the balance is having those moments of pushing yourself, but also find your comfort levels because life is short and you want to enjoy yourself while the time that you never get your time back. So you have to also enjoy yourself at the same. So it's a balance between those two, uncomfortability and then nice sweatpants. I don't have to worry about it, you know.
Yeah, totally. I 100% agree. It's like on one end, I kind of get it, but then it's like, yeah, you kind of have to find the balance. I totally feel you. I agree. So in the process of everything though, let's talk a bit more about your inspirations because like you were mentioning how you first started off with video games and you went to go into concept art and then you moved and, you know, out of all of this, how were you able to balance like the arts part of it? Like, how did you ever experience like maybe times where you felt demotivated and you got art block and like, you know, I don't want to draw today. How did you? And if you did, how did you? Oh, the question, right? The question.
Well, no, well that's like daily. Like so to me, I've been able to turn what I do from hobby into a career because I've changed what it is. So there's visual communication, which is communicating your mental ideas out into a physical presence. But really, what it is I find it problem solving. So it's not about the art itself or making a pretty picture. It's about solving whatever problems in front of you. And for, you know, one client's going to be because somebody dropped the ball and they're late on something and they need to fill an illustration. Sometimes it's just a pretty looking picture. Sometimes it's character design. Sometimes it's layout of, you know, editing for, you know, storyboards, whatever. So the motivation is not necessarily like, I have to be inspired. Where's my muse for the day? It's, okay, wake up, put on your big boy pants, have your coffee, you got to problem solve. So how do you problem solve? What tools do you use today to problem solve? It makes it easier because it's not this, to me, it's artistic, but it's not in the same like, oh, it has to be a certain way or a certain look. It's like, no, it has to be on deadline. It has to work and it has to explain to whoever's eyes it has to get to. If it's to a consumer, it has to be finished and it has to be a product that they look at and go, ooh, I want to follow this. I like it. Or if it's for, you know, an art director, it has to be explained enough that they understand the idea so we can move it to the next level. Or if it's for a 3D modeler, it has to be on model and orthographics so they can see how they're going to build it. So each part of the puzzle, you're just helping problem solve the project. So I myself, of course, I get burnout just like everybody else. So I usually read, I dance silly in my office. I listen to, you know, weird music. There's all these things that you can do. But usually your brain is just saying like, take a break. You're thinking too hard. You finally, you run into that brick wall enough times and you go, why aren't I going through? And it's just usually like a calm, do something else. When I go on walks when I'm frustrated. So I go take long walks. The thing I realize that I don't do is I don't put on music or a podcast. So what I've realized is when I'm going on my walk, that's where my brain wants to think about the problem in a different way. But if I tune it out and I just put on music or whatever, my brain goes, la 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 la, I'm going to listen to 80s music. And so it's not doing anything. So there's moments where it's like, okay, that's my comfortable spot. But when I'm frustrated, what I really want to do is let it go and think about it in a different way. And then usually by the time I come back, I've at least thought of it and I've been away from the page, arguing with the drawing, yelling at it. And, you know, it usually helps that way. So, but I don't think that ever changes. I think it just happens and then it becomes easier to hear it come. And so you can adjust to it faster, just like in life. You go, oh, I've done this before. I've had bad days. Oh, I've had to give yourself a break, realize that you're always going to come back. And you're building that confidence that you'll come back to crush it, beat it, you know, do a good job. But early in the career, it's very hard because you don't have that amount of trust in yourself. So you always worry that if I don't do it right now, it's never going to be work. It's never going to be fixed. And I think seniority and just kind of doing it enough times, you kind of go, I had a bad day, c'est la vie. You know, you just kind of like you move on and go, it'll be fine, because you'll figure it out later. You trust in your process that you'll figure it out.
I definitely love that advice because, like you said, I'm at that stage in my art journey whereby I haven't gotten that much experience, and I'm in art school right now, and I still struggle every time because I feel like if it's not now, then when, and it has to be perfect. And I have to, my roommate is always constantly telling me that if I'm struggling, she just like, take a step back, like stand up, go out, go to the balcony, breathe in, relax, think of something else, go drink water, just do something else. And most times I find out that when I come back, I have like a clearer head, and it's like, I kind of just like, okay, now it's just, I'm in a different mind state, and I'm able to find solutions better. Maybe not as easy, but like definitely not like before when I was struggling with the paper, So I definitely agree.
Yeah.
But as you said, it's something that you have to keep experiencing to eventually get used to. I still need to like, and I think a lot of like beginner artists or artists who are still on their journey need to remember that it's, whenever that happens, it's part of the process, and you just have to get used to it. So yeah, I definitely love that advice. It's something we all have to remind ourselves constantly. I definitely agree. You mentioned about like how when you work, it's all about like, problem solving and just like getting things done. And it's like not about feeling, oh, I'm motivated today, I'm not motivated. It's just about like putting on your big boy pants, going and get the job done, right? But I wanted to ask you about like your personal work because, like when this is not like a client, it's not anyone, it's you, it's just me time. What are your inspirations, and how do you like channel those inspirations? What gets you all like excited, like gets you all like back into like your preschool days or your coloring books, and you're like just excited to draw? What are some of your inspirations, and how do you channel that in your art?
This would be about a 10-day interview. I don't think you have enough time, Neddy, on this one. But my influences are like, well, a lot of the books you see in the background, I grew up in the prime 80s era. So, from the 70s and the 80s, there's the Rankin Bass, The Hobbit. So if I'm ever like at a point where I don't feel like the child spirit going on, I can go back and watch G.I. Joe, Transformers, The Hobbit, the animated movie. There's just so many things that inspire me to remind me of why I got into this in the first place. I read comic books still ferociously. I love comics. I think I came all the way back around my career from video games, TV, animation, movies, publishing, everything, and I'm solidly in comics, and I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I've got my talons in. It's like, this is, I think, what I wanted to do in the first place, but got talked out of it through my entire career to come back to it to go, I should have not let anybody talk me out of my dream and all this kind of stuff. So don't let anybody talk you out of your dreams. So to me, it's come full circle to where I just get inspired by reading other people's stuff. I get inspired by my kids. I have learned to not doom scroll and pick. It's very hard because society and our world has taught us to pick up this phone any moment you're bored. Even people at stop signs in their car will pick up their phone and scroll in at the stop sign, and they're the driver. So any moment it seems people have is this moment of like, I'm bored. But that's when I try to remember. So if I reach in, I put it back. I actually had, I painted this thumb a red color to remind me. So every time I picked it up and I did this and I saw the red thumb, I was like, oh, no, put it back. And so it's trained me to, during those boring times, that's when I look out into the world. I observe how people interact, how my kids interact with the world, people walking by, dogs barking, all these things, these little moments that our sensibilities now have started to erode from that. And I'm not saying like, oh, old man, kids these days, but it has driven us to pay attention to the screen. And I find so many small, cool moments when I'm not paying attention to those things. And I just sort of just go, be bored for a minute. Because only in boredom does your brain start to come alive. Does it start to figure stuff out? And I see that with my kids too. If they're glued to an iPad, all they're doing is the iPad, right? All they're doing is the video game. But if I make them get off, within 5 minutes, they're building something, creating something, making something with their imaginative mind. And so all we still need is a little bit of inspiration to do it. And that it's the boredom. It's making yourself be a little bit bored for a short amount of time. You'll start to think about something. Oh, what would happen if that happened? Oh, I came up with a story this morning before we had our interview. I was just walking down the street and I started thinking about two things. And I said, well, how do I mash those things together? Well, what if I did this? Blah, blah, blah. It may not go anywhere, but one piece of that might be something else that becomes something else later down the road in a story. And so it gets put in the book. I have a Google Keep, and I have all these little story ideas or even dialogue moments. I'll just come up with dialogue that makes me laugh. I'll go, oh, I'll use that one day. These two people, I don't know what they're doing, but one day, write it down, and it gets stored away. And then all those little moments when I'm finally getting the pieces together to pitch, a new book or a new comic or something like that, I'll bring in oh, I had something about that. And then that piece gets brought in. And so it all sort of it works as you go. As you branch out, it starts to work. So my inspiration is varied, but you always take those moments to have something. And Google Keep's been my best friend. So it used to be always a sketchbook. Everybody says, carry a sketchbook, da, da, da. But then when you want to start writing and you want to start building out your stories, sometimes you need a little bit more than just a sketchbook. Because I got tired of translating all of my chicken scratch words from my sketchbook into a document. So I just started to write it down in the document going, great, now I don't have to do that extra step. So Google Keep and a little sketchbook are the two things that I would have, and it keeps inspiring just being out in the world.
I I definitely agree with you. You mentioned about the whole being bored thing. I totally agree because I'm most people addicted to my phone. It's horrible. Doom scrolling.
Yeah, all of us
I'm
are.
gonna try the red thing stuff you said. Because I try to, sometimes I'm like, oh no, I'm just gonna check something, and before I know it, I'm 1 hour into Instagram reels or something. I love the idea about the red nail polish. I was like, okay, I'm definitely gonna try that because I really want to find a way to stop.
I stole that from a police officer. So I played volleyball with a police officer, and when he retired, so they were always on their laptop checking stuff out when they drove, right? And so when he became a civilian again, he was doing it with his phone. And he knew how many car crashes happened from people looking on their phone. So he did it, and he was just telling me the side story of I asked him, why do you only paint your one thumbnail red at volleyball? And then he told me that story. I was like, oh, well, I don't do that in the car, but I do that. Oh, so I just translated his story into how it can work for me. It's the same way. It's no segue into the book or anything, but it's just all information that we gather, right? You take it all in and you put it through your own personal sieve, and you let all the pieces that work stay in there and go, this makes sense. I'm going to keep this stuff. And the rest of it, you let drain out. So you take these stories from other people and go, oh yeah, I like that. I'm going to use that one. So by all means, please, anybody, Neddy, I'm so glad it really actually worked and reminded me of oh yeah. So yeah, but I stole it from a police officer.
You actually mentioned that I think it's a perfect segue to the book, actually. Do you want to tell us a bit about the book? Tell us about the idea, the creative process, what the book is about. Just introduce the book. Tell us about the book.
Okay, well, my book is really based, so a lot of books, I got asked to do this and I had to really think about it because one, it's a huge monumental task. And then two, you want to do a good job. You don't want to do a disservice, and you don't want to lie. You don't want to pretend. You don't want to crush people's dreams, and you want to help them out as best you can. And so there's a lot of things riding on that. So it actually took a lot of talking back and forth for me to actually do it, because if I was going to do it, it was going to be, we're going to do it. But the book really is the one that I wanted when I was going to school. I looked for every single book under the sun to find. And what I really found out was I liked the books that were about theory and not about when theory just turned into personal practice. And what I mean by that is so many of these books say how to draw, how to do it this way, how to do it that way, but it's so heavily influenced by just that one artist's version of the world. And I got always frustrated with I would talk to it like I would talk to a horror film. Like, don't go through that door. I would read it and talk to it. I would be at Panera Bread reading this book, drawing and sketching and going, why are you, this is just your opinion. This is not even, it's just the way that you've decided to do it over the years, but you're not talking about the theories behind it and why you would do this or that, or like what are the tools. And so this book I tried to make not about the way Brett draws or the way Brett sees the world, but here are all the different things that you can use to find out who you're going to be. And it's specifically for if there's something that doesn't work with the way you see the world or want to see the world, ignore it. It doesn't have to be part of your tool belt. It doesn't have to be a part of it. And that's what bugged me, is people talk in absolutes when they're talking about something that isn't math. Math is absolute. 2 + 2 is 4. But in art, hand grenades and Jello equals mold. There's no rhyme or reason. It's all subjective and it's abstract. And so I know people talk about the certain design sense and certain things, and these things go together. But to me, I've seen it successfully broken all the time. So there is no set rule. You're looking for the people who agree with your sense of design and art, and you cater to that, how you want to see the world. And so I made the book to be sort of like an overview of all the different things you can add to your art, or be, or go down this path, or turn it into this, or do this. But it's really about, here's the tools. And that's why I switched tools and art supplies, because everyone says the tools are your pencil and da-da-da. It's like, that's just the way that you do it. Your tools are actually like motifs and and line weight and all these other things that come into play, and how you play with your lines. That's a tool that an artist uses, and which ones you decide to use is the important thing. That's the individual artist decisions. And so I try to, on purpose, not go down a road of do it like this because it's worked for me. Like, plenty of art has worked and I have nothing to do with it, so I can't talk in this absolute way of this is the way to do it. And so I made the book that I wanted to see when I was going through it, searching for these answers of like, no, don't tell me this is the way. Show me the things that I can do, and I'll find out what I want to do with them. That's part of the journey. And I know that can be frustrating because that's open, right? That's much more of an open scope than it is do step 1, 2, 3, and 4, and all of a sudden you've got this finished piece. That's easier, but it's also been done ad nauseum everywhere. So this book is much more open and about the ideas of what art can do.
I was trying so hard to contain my excitement when you started talking, because this is a conversation I enjoy so much. I talk about with my classmates. It's like, I cannot stress how much not to say that I have an issue with it, but like, it's very important for people to understand that art is very broad, and when you learn in that kind of like narrow-minded way of like, oh, I'm just following this like step by step, you're constraining yourself to a box of like predefined steps. And if you're intentional about that and that's what you want to do, then that's totally fine. But sometimes people are not aware of this. They just think, okay, this is what I have to do, and they force themselves into like this book step, this thing, because that's what they believe they have to do. And in reality, there's like so many other ways to like, it's art. I mean, to be expressive and to like execute it's crazy to me. So I absolutely love that you took this approach for this book, because like you mentioned, there are not a lot of books that go in this way. Maybe because, I don't know, it's like you said, a lot more difficult for people might feel, oh, this is too broad. I just want to know how to do it. I want to know the good stuff. Just tell me how to go straight to like drawing like you. But the reality is that that's not how you create expressive art. That's not how you make art that's authentic to you. You really have to know the theory. You really have to know what makes, what you want to do, and like how to like, use, like you said, the tools, the line weight, and how you choose what you want and make something unique to you. You know, I really do think that's I love that, and I think that's a very amazing, like, I love that you made that decision. So yeah, that I'm so
Thank you.
yeah, I tried so hard to like not like turn on the mic and like just like, oh my god, yes, and like just start nerding out, because it's a topic I love myself. Like I love it. But yeah, you've you've explained the book. Can you tell us a bit more about like the chapters and some, like, just give us a little like teaser, not too much, don't spoil it too much, just a little like teaser.
Not too much. All right. Well, there was a little bit of teaser of like how switching the tools and supplies are different, but I kind of give a brief overview of everything, but keeping with, so I'm a little bit of a ham and a silly person, so I really wanted the book to reflect that too. So it's definitely got puns and silliness to it, but it goes over a little bit of everything. So it kind of goes over storyboards, how you can storyboard, the special effects. It goes over like environment design, layout, perspective. So it hits all of these points of all these things. And again, perspective is just a tool. Perspective is just a tool too. Everyone talks about like you need to know perspective. Like, not if you are, a cubist. You don't really, I mean, if you've decided to go out and it's like, no, perspective is just a part of the puzzle, but there's plenty of artists out there who don't do anything with perspective. People have whole art careers without perspective use at all. So if you don't want to go that route, you learn a little bit and go, oh, that's what, 3-point perspective is. Okay, great. Don't need that in my pocket. So it's got all of these different things where, I kind of break down props and environments and how to think about those things. But again, it's in these chunks. So it's not, it's made for our world now, which is each chapter is like, I mean, color theory is maybe a little bit larger, but each one is, you're maybe talking like 3 or 4 pages of just brief overview of these things. And that gives you at least a starting point to practice, and also have practice pages in the book. So that was when I was teaching, that was one of the most important things that the students really liked, is I had tear sheets for them. So in the book, there at the end of the chapter, there's like 2 tear sheets of like this, just, you can draw in the book if you want, or you can make it pristine, don't touch it at all, and you can download it off the website. But there's little practice ones of like problem solve, and I give you part of the problem saying, turn this into this, using what we've just talked about. And you do it in your way, not in Brett's way, not in, your classmates' way, but your way. How did you solve this problem? So all in all, it is that book that's quickly digestible, and then humorous. Hopefully it's humorous. That's who I am. I can't not try to be funny and silly, but that's also something that 3D Total, to their credit, really asked me to do on purpose, was make it like me. So if you're gonna get the Brett book, it's gonna feel and sound like Brett. It's not gonna be like the English version of Brett, or the you know what I mean, or like the 3D Total version. They really allowed me to sort of just really kind of be silly and sort of add who I am in there as well. So I'm pretty happy that I think it comes through. We'll see.
I think I already probably know your answer for the next question, but like your response, but we'll get to that. So I love the fact that you made it a workbook. I think that's really cool. Like it's kind of like a follow along, do this and do that. And I obviously love the fact that you added a bit of personality. Like, I think it's always cool. One thing I love about like art books, especially like arts of books, like the art of Lowish or the art of this. I love those books because it's all about the artist's personality. And I love when an artist's personality shines through the book. Like, I absolutely love when you can flip the page and you can just tell like, oh no, this artist definitely poured in like their self into this book. I think it feels a lot more authentic, and it's a whole better experience in general. And I love that you did that. I love that 3D Total gave you the like freedom to do that. I think without that, the book wouldn't have been the book, right? You know what I mean? It's like, it wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't have said yes to the book either. Because if it's too, you know what I mean? There's a fine line between like wanting to be taken serious and then being serious. It's like the information is serious, but we play for a living. We're creative for a living, so it can't be this dry thing. So I think it has to work in tandem for me anyway, or else I won't be able to do it.
It's fine. I think that's totally fine. I fully understand. I mean, sometimes who wants to read a physics textbook anyways? You know, it's like
awesome. Yeah, nobody wants.
Yeah, so like I said, I think I already know your answer to this next question, but like I'm gonna ask it anyways. What was your favorite part of working on this book? Like, what was your favorite chapter, or what did you enjoy the most in the entire process?
Yeah, I will honestly say, so seeing it all together was really fun to see, especially because you're working in these little short chapters and these bursts, and you're not really showing anybody. So you're doing 200 plus pages without a lot of interaction. So you don't know whether it's going to really resonate. Giving it to 3D Total and their feedback was overwhelmingly positive was like one of the highlights because you're doing it in a small bubble. But I would say once I figured out how to talk to myself and project me younger going, what do I want to say to me who was just starting out looking for this stuff? The way I wrote chapter heads on each one, sort of breaking it down mentally, because I'm a mental guy. I'm one of those people like, oh, tell me cerebrally what's going on and why. Why'd you make that decision? What's up with that? And sort of just really talking about, you know, you're going to be fine no matter what, little Brett. Don't worry, little Brett. I'm going to pat you on the head. Everything's going to be just fine. Once I figured that out, it was really fun to write to that version of thirsty, hungry, not really knowing what to do artist, saying, here's all the things you're going to do. You might not be able to do all these things today, but you can always come back to this, pick it up. And I call them aha moments. So I had this with a teacher. It wasn't in art, but it was in mental theory. It was math as knowledge. And it was a class, and he said, you're going to have aha moments. And that's when 5 years down the road, something you didn't understand in my class, you're going to do because you've done it enough time, and you're going to sit there and go, aha, that's what you meant. And that's what I'm hoping that this book does, because we're all over the map, right? Somebody's going to be right on the cusp of getting a job, and somebody can get a book where it's just at the beginning of their journey. So you have to at least have everybody understand the middle section between those two ideas. And hopefully you have enough aha moments built into this book. I hope that somebody can read it and then down the line go, oh yeah, oh that's what that, oh all right. Or they finally get to a problem that can be solved by something that they didn't need to use up until they got the book. And so to me, that was the most enjoyable thing, was to sort of try to find those other people like me and write those chapter heads and write that towards them, towards that person that I wanted. So
Totally. I totally agree with everything you said. First of all, I am also a very like mental person. If my aha moments was the moment I realized that I understood more when you told me why things worked. Because like in the past, I used to watch tutorials of like, oh, how to draw a girl, do the eye, like, and I just followed it. And like, if I tried to do it again, I would never get it right. And then I was like, okay, how does a head work? And then I learned to like, so, yeah, that makes sense. Like now I get it. Now I know why you did all that. You know, like why didn't you just tell me this? Why did you just, you know? I totally agree, and I absolutely love that. Like I definitely agree that like you know it's always most times in like when you learn something as a beginner you don't really understand. You go back and you learn it again, and it's like having this book that kind of takes you along the process is definitely. I definitely think it's going to be very beneficial for a lot of creatives out there, a lot of artists, a lot of people who maybe want to get into this or who already have experience and just kind of want to brush up on their skills and improve. But I want to ask you though, who would you recommend this book to on the personal level? Like if you were like, okay, this book, I would recommend this book for so, who would that be?
Oh, besides everybody? I mean, I think, again, it's hungry young people that are wanting to do this or expand their knowledge base, people who are interested in art theory and just how things work. It's not heavy on step-by-step process to have a finished piece that just looks like something I did. So it's more about the creative personality that wants to know, that wants to have more knowledge-based skills, more things in their brain that they can pull upon to go on their own journey. So go-getters, hopefully it's peers. I've already got a lot of people that I respect that are already getting the book because they respect me. So hopefully there's stuff even in there where maybe they're like, oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, let me add that. So hopefully I broke it down that there's enough in there for somebody who's on my level now to somebody who's just starting out, and there's something for everybody there that they can understand. And there's also philosophy in there from my own point of view. So there's things in there about just life in general, because I think everything about you does reflect in your art. I don't think that art is a separation of person. It's things about your life will come into your art and vice versa. It is about a lifestyle, it is about a life of who you are. So even in the book, I've got those sort of things in there where it's really talking to my younger self, saying, don't worry, this is what's going to happen. So it's not just the step-by-step process, but it's brain people. So if you're a brain person, which I think you all are, that's who I think it's for.
I love that. With everything you said, I think everyone should have a copy of this book on their shelf. I think everyone should. It just seems like the one book, that one holy grail that should be on your shelf. But thank you so much. Definitely.
It's the one book you should have.
Yeah, if any book, you should have this. Before we round up the interview, I've taken so much of your time today, but I truly appreciate it. But before we round up, what general advice do you have for beginner artists or artists who are kind of wanting to get into art, already are into art, and they just want any advice, anything, what single advice would you give to any artist out there right now?
That is so tough. One piece of advice. One piece of advice. Well, the one I give the most from expos and conventions and everything is the difference between a hobbyist and a professional is the professional didn't stop after it got hard. That's the biggest difference I see. So really, really getting past that uncomfortable stage of frustration is a big key. But really, you got to find yourself. You got to find yourself in there, because at the end of the day, if you're making art for somebody else, you'll never be satisfied, because even if you make it for somebody else and nobody else pays attention to it, you've just lost twice. You've lost on making something for yourself, and you've lost on what you did it in the first place, which is to get likes or get eyeballs or 10 years down the road, whatever VR buttons are when they look at your art. Whatever it is, you're catering it to the wrong source. So keep searching for yourself within that art, because that's all part of who you are. And then just don't stop. Don't quit. Don't quit. Because even if you keep it as a hobby, don't let ego and all this social media stuff stop you from enjoying your hobby. So for a professional hobby, don't quit it just because some outside influence is influencing you to stop. Just don't. There's not enough ever art and creativity in the world. So even if it doesn't become a job, don't quit.
Definitely, I agree. It's gonna be a long journey, but that's why we're here, right? We're all in this for the ride. It's all part of the process. So perfect. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you.